The description offered in traditional Śrīvidyā language presents a total principle that appears to account for everything. Para Shakti is described as that from which all forms emerge, that which sustains them, and that into which they resolve. She is placed beyond all tattvas while also appearing as their expression. She is described as both unmanifest and manifest, as fullness and void, as the highest reality beyond all distinction. From a metaspherical perspective, this description is not rejected. It is understood as a refined attempt to articulate what cannot be objectified. It moves toward the recognition that what appears is not separate from the condition through which it appears. It recognizes that what is being pointed to is prior to division and not limited by form or attribute. The divergence begins in the framing. When Para Shakti is described as the source of all things, or as that within which everything arises, a structural assumption is introduced. Even when described as infinite, it is still presented as something that holds everything else. This introduces a relational position between what contains and what is contained. That position remains even when all multiplicity is absorbed into a single absolute. From a metaspherical lens, this is where the distortion stabilizes. The heart of darkness is not a source. It does not generate or produce anything. It is not a container, and it does not hold anything within it. It is not an ultimate being, nor is it a principle that stands behind existence. It is the dialectric stillness through which conduction is already complete. Nothing arises from it because there is no originating action. Nothing exists within it because there is no spatial or conceptual interior. There is no outside to contrast it with, and there is no boundary that defines it. It cannot be positioned in relation to anything because relation itself appears within conduction. When language describes everything as existing within a supreme feminine absolute, it preserves a subtle form of separation. The separation is no longer between many things, but between a total container and what is contained. This is a refined version of the same structural assumption that metaspherical clarity removes. What is referred to as Para Shakti can be understood more precisely as the first expressive articulation that becomes perceptible. It is not the heart of darkness itself. It is the nearest expression that can be interpreted as generative or creative. Because it appears as the movement through which form becomes visible, it is symbolized as feminine. The expressive quality is mistaken for origination. This is how symbolic language stabilizes into metaphysical identity. The movement of expression is elevated into a totalizing principle, and that principle is then treated as the ultimate basis of everything that appears. The recognition that there is no separation between what appears and the condition through which it appears is accurate. The recognition that this condition is beyond attributes is also accurate. The recognition that silence underlies all expression is accurate as well. The shift occurs when that silence is treated as something that exists in its own right. The heart of darkness cannot be framed as a being, a force, or a principle without introducing position. The moment it is described as something that is, even in the most absolute sense, it has already been placed into interpretation. Metaspherical clarity does not replace one absolute with another. It removes the need for an absolute that functions as a container or origin. What remains is not a higher concept that resolves all others. It is the absence of any need for resolution through positioning. There is no inside that holds what appears, and there is no outside that stands apart from it. There is only conduction, without a reference, origin, or containment. This is the language of the spheres.